Welcome to the NCC Libraries tutorial, Chicago Style Formatting. The following slides will explain what Chicago Style is and how to use it. Besides, because my teacher said so, there are a few other reasons why it's important to cite your sources in any research assignment. First, it allows the reader to track down and verify the sources you used in your paper. Also, if you base your thesis or argument on reliable and accurate sources, then the reader is more likely to agree with your point of view. Most importantly, plagiarism is stealing, and it is not okay. Please show other scholars the respect you would like to be shown. The rule for citations is anything that is not your own original idea or common knowledge must be cited. Even if you rephrase someone else's idea using your own words, you still have to say whose idea it was. Chicago is just one of many formatting styles used in college-level writing. Some others you might know are MLA and APA. These styles tell us not only how to format a paper, everything from what the font size should be to where the page numbers go, but also how to say where we got the information we used to write the paper. This is known as citing your sources. Citations go both in a list at the end of the paper, the bibliography, and within the text of the paper itself. These are called in-text citations, and in Chicago style, you can either put them right in a sentence using parentheses, at the bottom of the page as a footnote, or altogether on their own page as endnotes. The only difference between footnotes and endnotes is where the in-text citations go. Footnotes allow the reader to refer to the citations easier, but endnotes leave more room on the page for content. Your instructor should tell you which kind to use. Now we'll talk about the footnote-endnote system in depth. To cite a source within the text of a paper, you put a little number at the end of the sentence where you refer to the source of that information. The number corresponds to the citation either at the bottom of the page for a footnote or on a separate page at the end for an endnote. Here is what a page in a research paper with footnotes looks like, and what a notes page looks like in a paper using endnotes. Both Microsoft Word and Google Docs have a footnote tool to make it easy to format them. Remember, if you're using Endnotes, the format of the citations is the same. They just go on a different page. So what information do you need about a source to create a footnote or endnote for it? Basically, it's who, the author, what, the title, where, publisher, and when, date published. Depending on the type of source, you may need a few other details, which we'll get into later. Here we have the formula for a footnote or endnote for a book, and some examples of what yours might look like when finished. If your source does not have any of these elements, just skip over them. For example, not all books have an editor or a volume number, but if yours does, this formula shows you how to format them. As you can see in these examples, only the first line of a footnote is indented. Each note begins with the author, listed with the first name first. Then you put a comma and a space, and then the title. The title of a whole book goes in italics, but the title of a part of a book, such as a chapter, goes in quotation marks. If you are citing the whole book, just skip the chapter element. All the major words of the title should be capitalized, not just the first word. Then you put another comma and a space, and the editor if there is one. If your source has an edition or volume number, that would come next. And the next element you will list is the publisher. In parentheses, put the city where the book was published, then a colon, a space, and the name of the publishing company with all major words capitalized. Then a comma and a space, and the year it was published. Usually, the last element in a citation for a book is the page number or numbers in the original source where you found the quote or idea you are citing. After the publisher, put a comma and a space, then the page number or range of numbers. Do not add the word pages or any abbreviations such as P or PGS. If you are not including any page numbers, just put a period after the publisher. Finally, if you used a book that was in electronic format, also known as an ebook, provide the URL or DOI number. All citations end with a period. The elements you need for citing an article from a print journal or database are very similar to those of a book. You will need the who, what, where, and when. However, there will be two titles, one for the whole journal and another for the article itself. You will also need identifying information about the issue of the journal, such as the volume number and the month and year it was published. If your source is electronic, which most journal articles are, you also need to provide the web address or DOI number. Here is the formula for a footnote or endnote for a journal article and some examples of what yours might look like when finished. Again, we start with the author's first and last name, then a comma and a space. Next come the two titles, the title of the article and a comma in quotation marks, then the name of the journal in italics with all major words capitalized in both. There is no punctuation between the journal title and the next element, the volume number. After that, put a comma and a space, the abbreviation NO for number, a space, and the issue number. Then the month and the year go in parentheses. Abbreviate all months except May, June, and July, but do not put a comma after the month. This is followed by a colon and a space. As with a book, if your journal article does not have one of these elements, such as example number 2 here, which only has a year for the date, just skip over it. Then put the page number or numbers of the article, a comma, and a space, and the URL or DOI with a period at the end. If you used an article that was in print format, skip this element and just put a period. A note about URL versus DOI. Most electronic journals and library databases provide DOI numbers for their articles, which stands for Digital Object Identifier. It is like a URL, but more stable, since URLs can change over time. Since it is more reliable, use the DOI instead of the URL whenever possible. The elements needed for citing a website should look familiar. They are essentially author, title, publisher, and date, along with the web address, URL. Many websites do not include all of this information, so once again, if you can't find that element, skip over it. Here is the formula for a footnote or endnote for a website, and some examples of what yours might look like when finished. The footnote or endnote for a website begins with the author, which can be a person, listed first name first, or an organization, such as a company or government office. This is followed by a comma and a space. You'll notice that in example number 2 here, there was no author listed for that website, so we skipped that element. Next, the title of the web page and a comma go in quotation marks. then the publisher of the website, and a comma. Capitalize all major words in the publisher's name. Next, we need a date. This can be the date the website was published or updated, if given, or the date you found it, if the publication date is not given. Include either the words published, accessed, or last modified, respectively, and use the month, date, comma, year, or just month-year format. The last element is the URL, which can be copied and pasted from your browser's address bar, and a period at the end. The hyperlink does not need to be live, meaning blue and underlined, especially if you are handing in your assignment as a paper document. So do a right-click on it and choose Remove Hyperlink. Besides books, journal articles, and websites, there are many other types of sources you may refer to. The following slides provide examples of footnotes or endnotes for videos, social media posts, works of art, and more. Feel free to refer back to these if needed. And now for some helpful Chicago-style hints about footnotes and endnotes. Once you cite a source in a footnote or endnote with all the required information, you can use a shortened version of that citation if you refer to the same source again later on. Here's another time saver. If you cite the same source twice or more in a row, you don't have to rewrite the entire footnote or endnote. Use IBID instead. There is another option for in-text citations in Chicago-style formatting besides the footnote-endnote system. That is the author-date system. In the author-date system, the in-text citations are not found at the bottom of the page or altogether on their own page. Instead, they are kept within the body of the text, much like in other formatting styles like MLA or APA. The only difference in the bibliography for an author-date style paper is that the date comes after the author in the citation instead of at the end. The formula for an in-text citation in a paper using the author-date style is very short. You only need the author's last name, the year of publication, and if the source is in print, a page number. Include a comma after the year. All of this goes in parentheses, which is why you might hear this style called parenthetical citations. As was mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, any source that is cited in the text of your paper, either in a footnote, endnote, or parenthetically within the text, must also be included in the bibliography, or list of sources where you found the information for your paper. The format of a citation in the bibliography is slightly different than it is in the text. Let's take a look at some examples. As you can see, the author is listed last name first in the bibliography. If there is more than one author, though, the additional authors are still listed first name first. You can tell this is a bibliography for a paper using the footnote-endnote system of in-text citations because the publication date comes after the publication name. If this were an author-date system paper, the date would be listed right after the author's names in each entry. This slide explains how to actually format the page your bibliography is on. The main things to remember are to start the bibliography on a new page, The entries need to be listed in alphabetical order, single-spaced, and with a hanging indent. This means that all lines of the entry except the first line are indented. Both Microsoft Word and Google Docs have a tool that will apply the hanging indent automatically, so you don't have to format the spacing manually. In addition to citations, Chicago Style also has guidelines for formatting the rest of your paper. This slide contains information about font, spacing, margin, and page number requirements. And if you can believe it, the cover page has formatting requirements all its own. Here's an example. When formatting quotations in Chicago Style, there are two kinds, run-in quotes and block quotes. Most quotations are short enough that they can be worked into the text of the sentence or paragraph as a run-in quote. But if your quote is too long, you need to set it off by itself as a block quote. If your quote has a typo in its original format, just fix it. No need to point out the change. Here are some special formatting circumstances you may encounter and how to address them. Note that there should not be any blue underlined website addresses in your bibliography. Here are a few exceptional situations you may encounter and what to do about them. For example, say a website does not have an author. In that case, you would use the company or organization that is responsible for the content of the website as the author in your citation. And here are a few final details. Remember, if your teacher gives you directions that are different from what the official Chicago Style guidelines say, follow your teacher's instructions instead. The links on this slide will take you to other resources for information about Chicago Style formatting. Their full web addresses are posted in the comments below. You can check any of these if you have a question that hasn't already been answered in this presentation. Don't forget, if you're on campus, you can also use one or both of these books on Chicago Style while you're in the library. They are shelved in the reference section, so you can't check them out. And that's the end. If you have any questions while working on your assignment, there are many different ways you can reach the library for more assistance. We are available by phone, email, or live chat during the hours listed on our website, www.northampton.edu/library. You can also schedule a time to meet with a librarian one-on-one, either virtually or in person. And there are instructional videos on how to use many other resources on the NCC Library's YouTube channel. Thank you for watching and good luck.